Welcome to the Drapery. Dr. Chris Maker DC here. Wanted to go over week 2 of the Magic the Gathering Strat Community League. First, a deck tech, and then replay analysis of my match. So today I decided to play a bit of a crazy one, inspired by Maltercio. So today at SPDC, actually, I got ninth on tiebreakers at 2-1. With Instant Control, I just updated it a little bit, so you can sneak peek at that real quick. I beat Mono Red, lost to Mono Green, and then beat Blue Black Control. The only differences in the deck are I cut 4 Voyage's End and put in 3 Disdainful Stroke and 1 Negate. Voyage's End is really there to mess up the heroic decks. It's okay to bounce big creatures and then counter them with Nullify, but that's not the main intended use. And then sideboard, added those Voyage's Ends and then added some Rage of Perforos in order to deal 4 damage to things like Grey Merchant, Scholar of Atheros, Hooting Mandrills, stuff like that. Also, pretty important clause that it scries, so most of our cards are letting us dig to relevant things, and it cannot be regenerated, so it also kills Servant of Timuret. It was basically this card versus Aerostorm. Aerostorm could potentially deal 5 to kill something like a Nessian, but you'd have to like chump attack into it, or hopefully have like a Coral Barrier Squid getting through unblockable. It's like too much has to be going right for Aerostorm. Aerostorm can hit the face, but I figured the Scry, killing Servant of Timuret, and only costing 1 red, would be fine, but it didn't come up that much. But yep, that was the deck today, and this is like week 6 of SPDC. I'm already getting bored of playing these good quote decks. So for this, I saw this deck. I saw him play it. Now, I didn't know exactly his list. I just saw him play a little bit, but let's look at his list. Alright, key things he's trying to do. Just mill. Thassa's Devour. 2/6 for 5. Mill 2. Constellation, mill 2. Counterman, mill 4. Counter a spell. Mind Sculpt. That's basically the build around card here. So 4 of these is 28 cards. Half the deck. Thassa's Bounty. Staple to the Dimir mill, draw 3, mill 3, and then some other cards. So other cards that I deviate from that I didn't necessarily think fit this style of deck. Nessian Ash, it's a great stabilizer, but it costs 5 mana, and we're not necessarily trying to win with this guy very much. I think he is very good and probably merits some inclusion, but I do not think we want any. Actually, I don't even think we want any countermand if we're trying to mill people out. This counterspell is awful. It costs too much mana. Divination is good. Thassa's Bounty is good. This package is actually really potent. Verdant Haven's an enchantment, so it'll trigger Constellation off Thassa's Devour. Lets you gain 2 life, so it acts like another Radiant Fountain, which is good against the fast decks. And so I guess he played Voyage's End, but we were testing right after the match, and he was playing Voyaging Satyr, so that he could put Haven on a land, tap it for 2 mana, untap it with Satyr, tap it again for 2 mana. So that lets him ramp and play these high casting cost spells a little bit more easily. Encrust is just a way to try to stop a big attacker, but it's pretty bad. He has so many cards that I'm not looking to play anything like that. It's just too situational. It belongs in the sideboard, in my opinion. His mana base is all over the place. He's gaining life, playing green-blue, and he's also got 4 wilds, slashing just 1 mountain and 1 swamp, so he's got basically, pseudo 1 source plus pseudo 4 sources. I tend to count Evolving Wilds as like half a source, but with these constraints, it's more like a third of a source or a quarter of a source. Not very much. So what is he splashing black and red for? Red for Scouring, Sands, and black for Rotfeast or Maggot. If I was him, I would just splash Fester Gloom. It's not as good because it can't kill the black 1/1 Death Touch guys, but I don't think it's worth kind of ruining a lot of your mana for just being less consistent. Because what if you're playing against the mill deck, and they mill your one swamp or your one mountain? Then you're kind of cut off some of these cards. But anyway, really interesting to see what he actually built, because I just saw him playing a couple of games. So let's take a sneak peek into what we got. So I've been itching for forever to get 3 specific cards in the same exact deck. Ever since the M-Core All-Star League, I was playing Archaeomancer and Unmake the Graves, and that combination just makes me warm and fuzzy inside. So Mnemonic Wall, basically the next best option. Costs more, but it blocks better. Unmake basically allows you to go infinite with creatures dying and creatures coming back. And then the third card to the loop is Invasive Species. This guy is a bit of the glue in cementing our early game. He helps stop some early rush. He picks up a Radiant Fountain. So instead of playing Verdant Haven to gain 2 more life, we just pick up this land and then play it again. And that's a good way for us to gain more life, but we can also, like Verdant Haven is an awful top deck, whereas Species is a creature. So it can block an attack, and it can also pick up something like a Mnemonic Wall, which can be very useful for getting another trigger. Now, other than that, we have a similar mill package for Thassa's Devour, for Mind Sculpt. But that is in 4 Thassa's Bounty. But that is it for my milieu plan. My counter mans, I just thought just cost too much. I'm not playing the mana ramp package. So what I do like is the Constellation theme, drawing cards theme of Font of Fortunes. I just really like to play this thing on turn 2 so that I can ensure that I'm hitting my land drops, which I'm playing 24, which is about what I figured out is where I like to be on most of these control decks. And you can see with my lands, I got the 4 Evolving Wilds so that I can find the 1 of Swamp for the Unmake the Graves. I do have 8 dual lands, and they all produce blue mana, because I really want to hit double blue in the early game if I can. And then I might want to be able to play 2 green spells in 1 turn. So having access to 2 green is fine. And then the Radiant Fountains, really, I mean, if I just played all my lands in this deck, I would gain 8, 4, and 4, 16 life. And then I get to pick them up, play them again. It dies, I get it back with Unmake the Graves, pick another Radiant Fountain up, play it again. Demonic Wall, get back, Unmake the Graves, they just keep going off. So it's really hard for decks with finite amounts of damage sources to beat us before we mill them out. So it's kind of a race there. So, other cards, I still included Void's End. It's a really good combo with Mnemonic Wall. It's basically a free blocker. So you can bounce itself, always keep getting the Void's End back, and scry for free. Or I guess get a scry every turn if you need it. It kills tokens and it resets some early aggressive creatures. So I figured that would be fine to include, since we don't have any real, removal other than Nullify. I thought Nullify was pretty important. Grey Merchant, Disciple of Phoenix. a lot of any hexproof creatures. Those seem to be like the most powerful, you know, creature win cons. 4/4s and 4/5s, and you really want to take care of those. So other than that, let's look at the sideboard. Sideboard is a little different than his as well. I keep it clean. I keeps it simple since, first off, I've never really played this deck at all. For Disdainful Stroke, this card is very solid when it's solid. All those big boom booms. Negate, really solid when it's solid. Core Barrier, I really like this guy. And Fester Gloom against tokens and red aggro decks, even though it's our splash of black. It's kind of hard to get. These two cards are usually coming in together anyway, so hopefully we can play Coral Barriers, force them to make more guys, and then Fester Gloom them away eventually. So yeah, this is the deck. It's kind of a joke deck. I was actually not if I was gonna play against a tier 1 deck, I was expecting to get crushed. So yeah, it's interesting. One thing to take note of is you do not want to actively be mind sculpting someone who has treasure cruise in their deck, since you're just enabling their deck for them. So in general, you might not want to be playing this deck against things like that. Same thing with these guys, even against the black font of Return and the Griffin Dreamfinder, the new Auramancer, like you're kind of just hooking them up. So again, this deck is more against, like, I don't even know what it's good against. It doesn't seem good against a fast aggro burn deck. We do have some life gain, but we don't have much interaction in the early game. To me, this is like the anti-control deck. If a deck is very much like the Izzet control, or the Azorius control, or Esper control, or Dimir control, that one's a little bit more mono black, just splash blue. That's what I would think this deck could shine against. So anyway, there it is in all its glory. It's kind of a piece. So that's it for the deck tech. Stay tuned for the round, week 2 of the league.